Hello and welcome to episode 20 of Seddon and Lacey's Comic Stash, where we are talking TV adaptations of comic books. That's Seddon. I should get used to this somehow.
Never, mate.
Remember.
We never will. That's the truth of it. I have been on a lot of podcasts now, and I've been on a lot of YouTube stuff now, and no, every single time I'm guaranteed to get that wrong. So, but yeah, it's difficult.
And I am Lacey. And we finally have got a Twitter going, so you can communicate us through that at said Lacey's Comic. You know, that great named one.
If I'm smart, I'll put something up on the screen. If I'm
Oh.
smart, yeah.
So, as is tradition, what have you been doing in your dirty, dirty reading corner?
It's probably bad to phrase it that way. You know how much I love like it phrased that way, but it's probably bad because this week I revisited out of a curiosity because I remember loving it. It's actually I would describe it as a kids comic book. It's called Tiny Titans, and it is based on the Teen Titans, the DC franchise, and it has a lot of the kind of main big Teen Titans at the time, and also a lot of the ones that appear on Teen Titans Go, I guess, for familiarity. Yeah. But it's by a chap called Art Balthazar, and oh my god, I'm so terrible, I've forgotten the other guy's name. But it's very, very child's cartoon drawn, but and you know it's a humor based one, so you'll have a couple of pages of just a visual gag, the sort of thing that you might sort of see in a like a newspaper or something like that. But oh, I bloody love it, Chris. Like it really is very kind of artistically different. As I say, drawn very, very simply, but doesn't take away from the joy that's in it. But yes, I had bought it. I used to listen to a podcast with them on. They used to do it, and I found them hilarious, and that's what led me to read the comic. And I think I'd bought it about 5 or 6 years ago in a trade, and I was just kind of going through what I had on the shelf rather than what I had on the device because I quite fancied reading a comic book in my hands rather than on digital, and that jumped out on the shelf of me. So yeah, Tiny Titans all the way for me. And I read the first 2 volumes of it, and I think I've got volume 3 and 4. They are super quick reads because they are, as I say, belting out. There's lots of minimal panels, minimal words, so you can kind of fly through it. But yes, an absolute belter for me.
Nice.
And yes, as I say, reading kids' comic books in the dirty reading corner. My bad. What have you been up to in your reading corner?
Well, I have been on brand as of recent with reading things that fit our show. I've been reading Batman 66. So, volume 1 of the Batman 66 collection of 9 stories. I think it's 6 or 7 issues. Because a couple of them are quite short, but there's a couple of longer ones in there. Of new stories in the Batman 66 universe. With all of the bows, puffs, quacks, bombs that you can imagine that you're going to get. Holy Cope Crusaders that you expect to get from Robin. Everyone's there. Commissioner Gordon, Chief O'Hara, Alfred, the army.
The flip top statue for pressing the button to get down to
that's
the
all there
cave,
as well. And such wonderful villains as you'd expect, the Joker, the Riddler, Penguin, Mr. Freeze, all beautifully rendered as the 66 versions of them. 2 versions of Catwoman, both the Julie Newman and the Eartha Kitt version.
Nice.
And callbacks to some of the lesser known but wildly held as great villains from the 66 run, as the Eggman, Vincent Price, the Mad Hatter, King Time.
Your boy, as I think of
my
him.
boy,
Mad
Hatter. And yeah, it is just, it's silly, it's written in the way that the TV show was, and when you read through it, you are automatically going, yeah, this could have quite easily been an episode.
It's odd, isn't it? Because publication-wise, I missed like this being announced and coming out. It's been running quite a while now, hasn't it? There's a lot of issues for this
Yeah,
outside.
there's six collected versions.
So you're looking at probably like at least 36 kind of issues of it out there. I love this.
And then there's the spin-offs as well, and
yeah,
because there's one with Green Hornet, one with the Men from Uncle, one with the Avengers, not those Avengers, but the proper Avengers, the British ones.
Bowler hats rather than Avengers Towers, that sort of thing.
Yeah. So yeah, it is just, it's nostalgia.
I think it's a great idea though, isn't it? Like, and
Yeah.
it's one of those ideas that now someone has done it, doing it. You go, why did no one do this before? Like, how have we gone? God, do the maths, Michael. 55 years before someone kind of went, oh, do you know what we could do? Like, we could kind of hit this up and make this into a comic book. We can kind of turn tables. But yeah, I was kind of waiting for you to get it read to tell me whether it was worth reading, because I think because we both have a reverence for the subject matter, I kind of, there's that little bit of fear that comes when there's a bit of reverence, isn't there? To go, oh my God, don't balls up something we love. But now that you said it's good, yeah, it will definitely be jumping into my reading pile in the near future.
Yeah, as it is, it's schlocky. It's very in keeping with the TV show. It's like I send you that picture of the British Batmobile because one of the episodes, one of the issues is they go to London because the Mad Hatter is trying to steal the crown jewels because he loves stealing hats. And obviously, what's the greatest hat of all time? The crown jewels. And because Batman's turned up in 60s London, he needs a Batmobile for while he's there.
He doesn't want to look out of place, does he?
So they give him a Phantom 5 modded up and kitted out as a new Batmobile for while he's in England. And it's just brilliant. But yeah, all for it.
The guy who writes it, Jeff Parker, I've read a few bits of his along the way, and whenever I've read his stuff, I've always liked it. But one of the things that I thought was kind of quite interesting that might tweak your interest if you've enjoyed it that much is, and going off of the week before's episode where we talked about Marvel 1602, and he does the Spider-Man follow-up Marvel 1602 story. So again, it depended on how much you liked it. It might be something for us to put in the back of our brains as might be worth a look at some point if we can pick it up for cheapsies or for now or something like that. Then it might be worth a look.
But obviously, with reading this, it's definitely, if the Batman 89 when it comes out later this year is held in the same way as this, I'm gonna be all over that as well because I love me Burton Batman, and a run done in that Burton universe will be bloody lovely.
I would like to think that whomever is making Batman 89 is going to do everything in their power to remove anything post Burton from the universe.
Well, the guy that's doing it is the original screenwriter of the two Burton films.
Yeah.
So
hopefully, yeah, as I say, like one of the big plot points is going to be getting rid of the foul stench that is what comes after Burton leaves that franchise.
Yes. So we will go into the topic of today, which is TV adaptations.
The thing that your mum may have told you makes your eyes go square if you watch too much of it. And I'm living proof. I mean, I may be wearing oblong-esque glasses, but I'm living proof that my eyes didn't go square. One of my heroes as a kid was Mike TV from Willy Wonka because he had the name TV in his name. So I watched a shit ton of telly, and a lot of it, as we say, like our interests are comic book. Our interests are quite far and wide, but I would try and gobble up any superhero comic book based TV that I could get my grubby little mitts on. But we're going to go right the way back to the early days of superheroes in TV, aren't we?
Yeah, so we won't be touching 40s and 50s Superman and Batman on the basis of neither of us have ever seen it. But we will start in what I'm calling the golden age of TV, where we get Batman 66, The Incredible Hulk, Wonder Woman, Spider Man, and things like Flash Gordon as well.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, I think we said like we've if anyone, if this is anyone's first episode, you've just heard us talk about Batman 66, and if you tune in for any more watching the other ones, it's very clear we both love Batman 66. I think it holds a special place in both of our hearts, doesn't it? I think it was very early on in our seeing, hearing, experiencing anything superhero-y, and luckily we both loved it as well. You know, you could almost argue, wow, they got superheroes in TV right first time out, didn't they?
They did.
Or first time out for us, should I say? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, like, as we've said before, that there's a few years between me and Zed, but both of us were brought up on the fact of on a Sunday, Channel 4, Batman 66, always on, and was staple TV viewing every weekend.
Oh, I mean, there was just a lot less channels, weren't there, back then? Back in the days of yore, for any youngsters. So, but we had, like, if we were lucky, we had 4 channels, but some of them didn't always run. Like, you might be certain times of day it wouldn't be on. But because there were so few channels, you would get a lot of repeats. And as you say, Batman 66 was something that we both saw on repeat, but it would. You could catch it pretty much whenever you wanted. And I think for a generational gap there, probably of about 10 years, it almost don't matter which end of that 10 years you are, you would have experienced Batman 66 on repeats on telly because, they had to fill that content somehow and they weren't going to pay for original shows. So,
but yeah, so that was...
As a slight aside, just very quickly, I know this isn't comic book related at all, but it's also where my absolute love for the TV show Bewitched come from, because again, at the same sort of time, that would be on repeat constantly in loop. And I think it's one of the shames about the modern world. And again, of course, Netflix streaming, things like that, there are access to all these old TV shows, but we watched them because we didn't have a choice. Whereas now that you've got a choice of 5 million things, I think there'll be really good stuff you'll never land on because there's too much for you to see. Whereas, like it was watch that or watch Songs of Praise. I know what I'm watching.
Batman every time.
Yeah.
So yeah, as I said, any previous issues where we talk Batman, we wax circle about 66.
Yeah.
So we're going to give a bit more love to the stuff that we haven't discussed on other shows. So we're going to start with The Incredible Hulk.
I love this show.
Lou Ferrigno being big and painted green.
Yeah.
Just beautiful. I will also chuck in Wonder Woman at this point because these two are very similar in these were where any TV show from the 80s took its premise. Every week Hulk or Wonder Woman were put into random situation.
Yeah. Random place, random town. Yeah.
evil thing is happening. Must save local village.
Yeah.
Going at the 80s, you get A-Team and Knight Rider and everyone else doing that.
And even when you sneak into the 90s, you get into like MacGyver and things like that.
Yeah.
A lot of these iterations, started this kind of TV formula. Was certainly for me was birthed at this point. And like I love the Incredible Hulk. Weirdly though, like one of the things that strikes me about Incredible Hulk is they changed his name, didn't they? He's David Banner in the TV show.
Yes,
it's Bruce Banner, and I've never really bothered to find out why. I don't know whether they just thought David Banner sounded better for a TV audience, or whether there was, I don't know, some scandal about someone called Bruce Banner at the time, so they thought they couldn't. But yeah, I mean, for anyone who's not seen the Incredible Hulk TV show and possibly only watched Hulk in the movies, this isn't your Hulk in the movies. This is a much more basic, as you said, Chris. It's the put yourself into a random town in a random situation, and generally he is trying to, let's say, quell the beast and find a cure, but also he's a good guy, so he's trying to help people, and that help tended to lead to him having to turn into Hulk at some point because there'll be a situation. But it's the littlest hobo, isn't it, with a great big bloody green monster that can smash stuff up. Don't expect a special effects. You know, it was of its time, and I think it probably even of its time, budgetary wise, you know, they did the best they could. But yeah, what a cracking TV show.
And then obviously Wonder Woman, again, the same sort of premise of, you know, Wonder Woman randomly turns up in this place.
Yeah.
Oh, and look, does a little spin, turns into Wonder Woman, saves the day. But
so
it was great sort of sit down, turn your brain off TV. That if you think in the States that was on every week, you know.
And I don't think I can't necessarily remember, and I don't think that Wonder Woman as such was probably progressively written. You know, it probably was written by a bloke, and there probably was a lot of lean into, look at this lass in her pants. She's a bit tasty, isn't she, or something along those lines. However, I think one of the things that was really good for me is that, so like my first three kind of visual experiences of superheroes. So I had, you know, Batman, I had Hulk, but I also had Wonder Woman. So I think it helped me understand that women could be heroes. And I know that sounds so daft to say, but I think that's a good message to send kids when they're young, especially boys. You know, like I think you and I have both discussed kind of offline and a little bit in the fandom episode about how the fandom can be predominantly male and sometimes can lean heavily into, we don't want no women in our comics. You know, the women are there to you know, like look pretty, but I had like a strong female superhero as my third superhero that I saw. So I think it was really good from that side as well. And belting theme tune. All of these, Batman, Hulk, especially the end credits for Hulk, and Wonder Woman all come out strong in their theme tune game.
Yeah, that was the days of banging theme tunes.
Yeah.
For TV shows. You know, say exactly what they are. Get in, get out, catchy as fuck.
Yep.
Other one on this sort of time period, which I didn't really watch, didn't see a lot of it, and I know from talking to you previously, you didn't either, is the Spider-Man TV show. I remember seeing it occasionally, but never being one that I would always sit there and have to view. And I can't remember. I think by that point it wasn't in heavy rotation over here anyway.
Yeah, I mean certainly like Batman 66 predominantly, probably followed by Wonder Woman and Hulk. You could easily and often see them on the telly. Whereas Spider-Man, yeah, I don't remember it getting kind of a big push over here, or if it did, not that repeated push that all the other shows got. I didn't really watch it because it looked a bit shit. And I know that seems a bit harsh, but I think so. As much as we said, like, you know, Hulk has some effects, but go light on it. But with Batman 66, I mean, part of the shtick was the costumes, wasn't it? Like the comedy part of it. Wonder Woman, as I say, they relied on spinning a lot, but I think they were clever with their effects. The problem with Spider-Man is you're putting a dude in that spider suit, and that's actually just really hard to make someone look good outside of a drawn page. And I think that always kind of put me off. But yeah, maybe we track it down. I don't know whether it is available anywhere though, or easily available, should I say?
The thing is, with the Spider-Man TV show, they were always going to struggle because Spider-Man's big thing is web slinging and swinging on ropes.
Yeah.
Which they couldn't even get to look good in the films until the Tom Holland ones, because the Tobey Maguire trilogy, the rope web swinging stuff looks a bit dodgy, and the Andrew Garfield ones, again, not the best, you know, stuff, and that's what 40, 50 years later.
Yeah.
So, you know, bless them, they probably tried, but I don't think, you know.
Yeah.
I think that's more going to be the Batman style walk up the wall because the wall's flat and they're just walking along it type thing.
As we say, it is difficult to do, isn't it? And I think like in these day and age, as you say, like now they've kind of got it, but the amount of years of practice with CGI and cost that gone into being able to make this a reality and make it look good. Yeah, it was it was potentially fighting a losing battle, wasn't it? But yeah, mate, it might be brilliant. If you have watched it, let us know, and we might hunt it down if people say it's fantastic.
Yes, all I do know is they fucking loved it in Japan.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
have
very
watched
big
the
in Japan.
watched the documentary on it, and yeah, it was fucking huge in Japan, and that was what then birthed the Power Rangers style TV shows as well for kids. So you know the legacy of that era of TV show. I think Power Rangers still even going now and still looks the same, but
Probably got
yeah,
about 8,000 different series now, hasn't it? Like,
but that birthed. You know, that was the one of the start points of that. We get to the 80s, and as mentioned a little bit earlier, the tropes and storytelling techniques of Hulk and Wonder Woman are taken by the A Team and the Dukes of
yeah,
Hazzard and Knight Rider and Nighthawk and Airwolf, and we don't see our heroes.
and I work on the theory, and again, it is only a theory that it was moved to this because they saw how um, popular the formula was, and went, well, why are we paying licensing fees for these characters? Why don't we just come up with our own? And I guess then, you know, you can spin them off into your own toy lines or merch and things like that. So yeah, from such a great beginning for us over you know, like a sort of 10 to 15 year patch, it's a decade of dryness for us, isn't it? After getting
Yeah,
such a good start, the bastards hung us out to dry after that.
yeah, and you know we all love 80s TV. It's what we were brought up on. Of course, we love it, but it was sans our comic heroes.
Yeah, yeah.
So
You
we
know,
then
when you look at like a kind of using other media to lead people into comics, TV wasn't going to be doing that for anyone in the 80s, was it?
no,
And arguably neither was film. So you know, it was a dry patch for that.
yeah, because other than what one or Superman 2 was late 70s, but I think you got Superman 3 in the 80s.
And four, don't you? As well. The
Oh yeah, and 4.
yeah. So as I
And
say, that ain't doing any favors for bringing anyone into comics, is it?
and Batman wasn't out till 89.
Yeah.
So yeah, there was a bit of a dry run there. We then get to the 90s where we're getting comic book adaptations, but they're not your superhero shows as such.
Yeah.
And it's a bit more of a sort of coming of age sort of shows that we're getting. So we get Sabrina the Teenage Witch, we get the surprising mega hit that was Lois and Clark.
I mean, with Sabrina, before we get to Lois and Clark, I mean, I think you are you're almost right in what you say of going like people wouldn't know it's a comic book show unless you told them it's a comic book show
Yeah,
because you know it is a like a teenage show about a witch doing witchy things, and that's what sort of teenager shows would do at the time potentially. So yeah, you don't, and it doesn't push on you that come along and read the comic book adventures of this anywhere
no,
near as much as the superhero stuff did, and arguably same with Lois and Clark. Like, obviously, people knew who Superman was. Superman is one of the mega like characters, and you know he's referred to as Superman in it, and he looks like Superman in it. But for what the show actually does for the bulk of it, it's not a superhero show. Like, there's not a corresponding comic book at the time
no.
where you go, here's where I experience what Lois and Clark is on a monthly basis in the comic books. How did you feel about Lois and Clark?
I fucking hated it because to me, this was a TV show aimed at the people that like Dallas, EastEnders, you know, your telenovelas and your soap operas. It was never for me. Didn't like it, but it was always on in my house every Saturday because my mum liked it, or as if I was at my nan's, she'd always watch it because she loved the human romantic side of Lois and Clark together, and it was premium viewing on a Saturday because it over here it was on what 5:30, 6 o'clock
Yeah,
on a
yeah.
Saturday. Yeah, it was the start
Probably before Noel's house party or some bollocks.
the start of the big TV run on a Saturday night at home. And yeah, this was fucking huge over here.
There's something very key you said there, isn't it? Of going like your mum liked it, and the same in my house. My mum liked it, and my mum wasn't. My mum liked EastEnders as well. By the way, I want that on record. But she wasn't a big TV watcher. She did shit around the house. Like while me dad, me and my brother would watch telly or play games or something, my mum would actually do stuff that needs to be done in the house, and then every now and again she'd pop in. But yeah, she would stop to watch this because it is odd because this is a Superman story, but it's not. It's a love story, isn't it? Ultimately, It's about these two getting together, but it has enough superhero Superman stuff. It borrows the tropes, a lot of the tropes that we were seeing in the everything from Incredible Hulk onwards, that kind of villain of the week, baddie of the week, kind of peril of the week stuff. But yeah, it's quite amazing. If you'd have said to me, probably back then, is this going to do well? I'd have gone no, because people don't do superheroes in this country because there really isn't a lot of it. But certainly, I thought if it had any chance of success, its probably primary audience would have to, and this is before watching it, its primary audience would have to be probably boys from 15 and up who like superheroes. And then you watch the program and you go, Jesus, this is not what I expected, but I will carry on watching it because I've been so starved of this. But yeah, it found a mega audience. And one of those audience was me. I fucking love this show. I think it is brilliant. It is also crap, but I think it's kind of that, in its crapness, it is brilliant. Looking back, the acting's not very great. Like none of them are particularly talented, but they are. I think you hit it on the head with the telenovela sort of style of, it's delivered in such a way, and if I went back in a time machine now and spoke to me back then and told myself I was going to love this and what it was about, I'd have probably kicked myself in the balls and said never. But no, I absolutely loved it. Interesting you mentioned Dallas, because Dallas is a fucking amazing show as well. Love Dallas. Required viewing in our house. Everything would stop for Dallas. We would watch it as a family. Dallas, amazing. Not comic book related though.
The thing is, what it always reminded me of with Lois and Clark was Due South, which again was just another one of those wet TV shows that was.
I never watched Due South. I might have to look that up now that I know that there's something that might scratch my Lois and Clark itch that hasn't been scratched for 20 years.
It's about a Mountie and his dog.
I remember seeing the adverts, and I remember probably maybe seeing the theme tune or a couple of minutes of it here or there. But I was probably when I was transitioning through channels. But yeah, not a show I've ever watched any quantity of.
And it's bad.
Is there a love story though, Chris?
Probably.
Yes.
I zone out after a while. The other thing that we got as well was a few sort of spin-offs of films. The one that I do remember watching because I fucking love the film so much was the Crow TV series. This was not good. It tried. Bless it, it tried. But the guy that they got to play the Crow wasn't Brandon Lee.
That would have been a bloody bit of casting, though, if they could have got Brandon Lee back into playing, wouldn't they?
It didn't have that same aggression and violence that the film has, because it can't. It's a TV show. Even though it was on, I think it was either Bravo or FX, or one of the premium channels on Sky.
it's still the
was
90s,
on
isn't
late
it?
night as
Yeah.
well.
It's still the early 90s, and what was late night TV in the early 90s is very dramatically different than what you'd even see in prime time now, isn't it? Like
Yeah,
you could push the boundaries only so far, and the honest truth is that the boundaries were much tighter, and you just wouldn't be allowed on TV no matter what time if you went probably too violent, too sweary. I mean, like swearing was such a bigger thing back then as
yeah.
being restricted on it. So yeah, it was fighting a losing battle. I mean, I guess the truth of it is that it's a battle it could have won if the storytelling and the storylines and the acting was so strong it kind of carried it through. But I got the feeling from having a brief chat with you previously that none of those things kind of really happened for it.
No, it suffers from A, having a low budget, and B, being very much unable to recoup the magic that the original comic, after reading it now, knowing
Yeah,
that, and also the film had.
yeah.
It did not do well.
I mean, similarly
Um,
to Spider-Man, where I probably avoided Spider-Man because I know I used the term looked a bit shit, but it almost felt like this isn't going to work. I think I probably didn't go near Crow the TV show because, like you, love the movie, but I just went, nah, mm, this is going to be a poor representation of what I liked, and I know I'm going to get really even even the much younger me would be bitter and hateful about it. So I went, no, let's not do it. Eh?
well, the thing is, this was 97, 98, so I
Yeah,
would have been 14-ish when it came out. And yeah, it didn't, fill my itch of what I got from the film, which I know I shouldn't have seen because that's an 18. And I was younger than it, but
well, I
it was a
guess as
different
well,
time.
like across these eras, and I know in the 90s there's a few. I'm going to go with lesser known. I think like there's a Swamp Thing series like in the early 90s, and I think there's a Human Target one, and we didn't always get these either. You know, we talk about
No.
contextually the world we lived in and the amount of channels, and yes, Sky was becoming a thing then, but it probably still didn't run as much of the American TV as we do get access to now. So yeah, some stuff just didn't get over here, but
I was gonna
I
say, I
think
think Sky back then was probably about 70 channels,
yeah,
and 4 of them were sport,
yeah,
5 of them were movies, and there was at least sort of 7 or 8 news channels.
yeah.
So
Right. Lots of kind of selling you shit TV channels as well, wasn't
yeah,
there? But I think for anyone who's watched this too, like in all these eras, and we'll touch on things that probably we've seen or things that we think are notable. But if there are any shows that you watch that are based on comic books around that time, let us know whether they were good, and if they were good, again we'll have a look, try and kind of hunt them down if possible. But yeah, certainly I know there were some that I didn't watch because of availability of them, and when the world opened up many years later and stuff was available, there was too many other great TV shows that had been made to maybe go back and track these down.
yes. So the Naughties was a period where it did slow down again, and I'm calling this pre-boom because the only sort of major one that was running for most of it was Smallville,
It was a
which
decade pretty much dominated by Smallville and Smallville only, wasn't it? Like it really is the only real major release, and it does run like 2001 to 2011. I think it actually got a 10-year run from memory.
yeah, I never watched it because
Well,
it was Superman, and it was me thinking, oh, it's just another Lois and Clark. And I think I watched one episode maybe and went, fuck me, this is Dawson's Creek, but just with Superman in it. Fuck this. I'm off out in a pub.
and just to go back to like I didn't watch Lois and Clark because it was Dallas with Superman, and I didn't watch Smallville with because it was Dawson's Creek with Superman. Are you fucking mad? Dallas is awesome. Dawson's Creek is awesome, and Smallville is good. I'm not going to go with awesome. No, I had again maybe the truth of it is in a decade of starvation, coming off of a decade of little morsels coming off a decade of starvation. Like, I think probably yes, that the comic book fan in me would have watched anything that they put on there. So I was probably a bit predisposed to this. I do think it's fine though, and I think sometimes it's really good. But more often than not, it is fine, and sometimes it is bad. I will not say it is not bad, but I said earlier about formula TV. So as much as I think a lot of the 80s stuff was birthed off of some of the ideas that they were putting into things like Incredible Hulk, the travel from town to town, Smallville really lent into the formulas that are probably coming in the 90s. It is Monster of the Week. Every week there's a new kid that gets a power because of kryptonite, and it will be a different power, you know, very, very akin to what you were seeing in things like the X-Files and stuff like that. But as you say, cross mix with that palette of and Dawson's Creek. So this is young Superman. This is high school Superman, where he has his high school friends, and you know that kind of drama of running the local newspaper, and that's often why they're investigating weird kid number 7 who's doing weird thing. It has all of that formulaic stuff that you would see in any team-based show at the time. But yeah, I really liked it. Do I think it helped comic books? No, because I don't think there was a corresponding product out there in the comic book world. You know, I think anyone who was watching Smallville, if they picked up an issue of Superman, they would not be getting what they were seeing on that TV show. So I don't think they'd necessarily stick around if it was Smallville that brought them there. But again, less of a juggernaut than Lois and Clark, even though it got a really long run. But this, I think, had a much smaller audience than Lois and Clark, respectively.
This was more aimed at teenage girls, whereas Lois and Clark was aimed at
your mum.
But the thing is, everyone that watched soap, so you've got an age span of what, 20s to 70s.
Yeah, I think I'd have struggled to get my mum to watch an episode of Smallville. So yeah, I think you're kind of spot on with that. I think it skewed to a much younger audience, didn't it?
The one thing that this period does give us, though, is things getting comic books from existing TV shows.
Yeah, we flippity flop, don't we? This is the world of comic book adaptations of TV shows, and good on it.
So you get Buffy, you get Angel, you get Supernatural, things like that all start getting corresponding comics for all that world.
Licensed comics used to be predominantly kind of movie franchises, didn't it, until this era, or toys, you know, that would as well. But yeah, this was the foray of companies such as like Dark Horse and things like that kind of going, you know, we've got the Aliens franchise, we've got the Predator franchise. What other franchises are there out there that we think we can turn into comic books and expand on the story? And yes, you know, they dip heavily into this pool.
And then just before the turn of the decade, the mega hit, The Walking Dead.
I actually forgot which one it was then. I thought, what's he talking about? And then, like, as soon as you said that, oh, yeah, of course, Walking Dead.
the TV show that no one probably expected to be as big as it was.
Yeah.
Most people would not have known was a comic.
And to a degree, I think some people probably still don't know it's a comic, but yeah.
Yeah, and fuck me, this is still a cultural phenomenon.
Yeah.
That has come out of this little black and white comic book that came out on a tiny little indie print.
I can't remember what episode it was where we talked about trade number 1 of Walking Dead, but we both, I mean, I read it kind of almost day and date over most of the series. I love The Walking Dead. You loved that first trade, and I think you're spot on though with as much as zombies are very popular in movies, or certainly you have their peaks and troughs, but generally they are. But I'm with you. No one expected this to go as big as it did. Like, and you know, it was on AMC, which, you know, a maker of some great TV shows, but also hadn't really birthed the mega hits at this point. And
I was going to say, by this point, what they've done, Breaking Bad and Sons of Anarchy, that have been their two big hits before
yeah,
this.
but I
But
mean,
this was just huge.
but comparatively, you kind of say, I think they were a bit above cult following ones, but they were shows that built up an audience because of the quality, didn't it? And then American Walking Dead kind of had that audience day one, and it just exploded, didn't it? Including, I mean, so far, like all the stuff that we've kind of covered, I think the truth of it is that for us, probably Wonder Woman, Hulk, and Batman probably led us to have a bit more of an inclination to read comics, but because that was our first finding of superheroes and we had an interest. But nearly everything else we've covered in those decades in between, I don't think pushes people to comics. I think, if anything, the stuff that was being produced, if people went to comics afterwards, they would be rejected. Whereas this is a comic book story turned into telly, isn't it? And I think not only the fact it was a smash hit, but I think this done wonders for comic books, full stop.
Yeah.
You know, and certainly for Robert Kirkman and Image, they sold a bucket ton of these. But I think as an art form, let's go with that as a term, I think we did it a little bit on the fandom one, but this is one of the peak moments. And you're right, this is the kind of start of a boom where you started to see people reading comics in public because it had an acceptable face now that people knew, which was The Walking Dead, the TV show.
And this is you started seeing graphic novels in all shops. It wasn't just a bookshop thing at this point.
Yeah.
This is where you would see HMV have the full run of the trades of Walking Dead because it was the biggest fucking TV show.
And I'm
that
sure
was on
that
at the time.
I'm sure that a lot of these will never ever see the light of day. But I think from a comic creator standpoint, bearing in mind a lot of the stuff we'll talk about on this show is the superhero stuff, the Marvel and DC, but independent comics have been around for a long time. Arguable whether Image actually really ever counts as an independent comic publisher, but like, let's say it is. But I think this is possibly the best time and forever for comic creators to make good money off of their own creations. There's been a lot over the years about how many characters were created for hire for Marvel and DC that people got paid to do, but never saw the big bucks that come at the end of it. Whereas The Walking Dead exploding like this, TV execs, when they saw this, they're sending all of their gophers out and going, get up the fucking shop and buy every comic book you can, because we want to option all of these that we can. And as I say, a lot of them will never see the light of day, but I think probably a lot of creators saw a real purple patch where they made a lot of money because they sold the rights to things. And I think that's a really good positive for the TV comic book crossover at this period.
Yeah, and then we go to the boom and where we are now with a bit of overkill. So, first we have the Arrowverse. So that's Arrow and Flash, Supergirl. What was the one when they were all together?
Tomorrow. It's got tomorrow in the title, hasn't it? Why am I blanking on it?
No, Things of Tomorrow. I can't remember.
Oh my god! Why can't I remember? Legends of Tomorrow.
Legends of Tomorrow. Yes. Which I liked Arrow. I liked Flash. Where I dropped out was the point where it got that you had to watch all of them in the correct order when they started with Supergirl and stuff, and it all became a chore because everything was interlinking. So they'd have their own standalone story that went for the season for their own show.
Yeah.
Then the interlinking story, and then the overall story that then was all of them interlinking. And yeah, I tapped out at I think season 3 of Arrow and season 2 of Flash by that point because Arrow was always a season ahead.
I was
But
pleasantly surprised by Arrow at the beginning. Like when like we'd heard or when I'd read that the because it's a CW, wasn't it? Which is kind
yeah,
of again like the sort of channel that you would expect Smallville to be on. And bearing in mind, this wasn't a million years after Smallville ending, and it wasn't it linked as such. But when I heard they were doing an Arrow TV show, and I probably saw like the visuals for it, saw Stephen and Mel and things like this, and I went, "Oh, kind of, yeah, I know what this is going to be." And it was what I thought it was going to be, but with a lot more nod to the comic books than we'd ever seen before. You know,
yeah,
this does have the villain of the week and peril of the week, monster of the week kind of thing to it. They are a younger cast, albeit not high school people. You know, like they are kind of the young adults, the early 20s, the people that would be like revered by probably people who are 5, 6 years younger than when they're watching it. But it had a lot of nods to stuff that happened in the comics. You know, there would be like in the Flash, you would see a newspaper that talks about the crisis and almost like the fan service stuff that I get so
yeah,
angry about in Star Wars because it's no longer fan service, it's just stupidity and putting a shiny object in a room. But you kind of see that in that and go, bloody hell, I never thought I would see mention of crisis on a TV show. And that's kind of like the exciting part of it. I think Flash I liked more than Arrow. Once that come on, I think I took to that more. Um,
yeah.
Legends of Tomorrow I always struggled a bit with. It felt like the show that I was watching because the other two were okay, and maybe this one will get okay. I weirdly loved Supergirl. I just really took to it, and I cannot tell you why because I don't necessarily think it was acted well. I don't even necessarily think it was scripted well, but there was something about it that just I don't know. It had a charm. It possibly felt like it was stepping back to those days of the 80s and things like that with the way that some of it was made, where it felt like TV of a simpler time. You know, there wasn't the dark,
Yeah,
angsty characters. You know, these were all kind of generally relatively bubbly, happy, but without being annoying as shit. But yeah, I look back at Arrowverse fondly, but I tapped out on all of them like way before now. And I think the problem I had with it is they were all good, but that's their high point. You know, like I found quite often I had the episodes on in the background and I wasn't really paying attention, or I was recording them on through Sky, and then the next thing I know, because I'd skipped out on a couple of weeks, I had 12 episodes to catch up on because I had 3 from 4 different series, and then it felt like a bit of a chore to catch up on them.
yeah. It's the thing with Arrow. There was a lot of bits on there, as you say, that were deep sort of Easter eggs to people. If you see it and you know
Yeah,
it, and it it didn't seem as though they were just throwing that shit in just to do it.
yeah,
A lot of it seemed to have a purpose because there would be a payoff
yeah.
during them, and as you say, they were done well and gave you a reason to for lesser characters as such. Because Arrow is a lesser character in DC. Flash obviously is a big name character, but had been, other than in the comic books, had not had any real
Yeah.
multimedia exposure at
No,
all.
no.
It was one of those things I don't think anyone would ever
I
thought,
think
oh,
there was
let's
like
do a
I think there was a pilot for a TV show from in the 90s that was considered so bad it never got past pilot, and I think that was the only other kind of multimedia thing he'd really had at that point. It's strange going back to like the TV to comics. Like these are to a large part dramatically different because they're all like kind of de-aged versions of the ones you would see in the comic. But again, I do think that an audience who's watching this, if they went and read Arrow comics, like Green Arrow comics or Flash comics, there's enough familiarity and linkage between the two that I think they'd enjoy it. They wouldn't be getting
yeah,
necessarily the stories that they saw on a weekly basis on TV, but there's enough DNA between the two that you probably built some audiences for the comic books based off of those TV shows.
yeah. And as I said, I think they shot themselves in the foot when they tried to interlink everything and made it. You had Arrow on a Monday, Tuesday you'd have Flash, Wednesday you had Supergirl, Thursday you had the Fingers of Tomorrow, and it was just a case of you had to watch all of them
Yeah.
in order because everything linked together, which I think was their downfall on that.
One of the ones that kind of come out at this time that had some linkage, because I know he appears in the episodes, but I've never watched an episode and I've never tried it, was Constantine.
Yeah.
And I again go back to some of the stuff he said earlier. And it's a shame because it might be really good for all I know, but I bloody love Hellblazer. I love John Constantine in Hellblazer when it's Vertigo and he's a bastard. He's a heavy drinking, hard smoking, shithead bastard. I couldn't imagine a CWS show not getting that across. And yeah, I'm sure they could make him snarky and they could give him an attitude, but I actively avoided it because I went, this is not going to be the John Constantine that I want to see on telly, and it's not the one that I want audiences who've never experienced him in a comic book to be their first experience of. Although I guess arguably the Keanu Reeves rendition of him might be a lot of people's only experience with him. But yeah, so I think technically that kind of does sit in the Arrowverse. But yeah, I just avoided it like the plague because it was too precious a character for me to see touched in that way. God, that sounded ruder than I meant it to.
Another one that came out at this time, but I fucking hated.
I'm laughing because you haven't said it yet, but just by you saying one that came out in this time period that you fucking hated, I know exactly what show you're going to say.
Which, you know, I gave it a go. I did 2 seasons of the fucker. I put myself through 2 seasons of this, hoping it was going to get good. It never fucking did. Gotham. Fuck off.
I tell you what, I'm with you. I fucking hated it. I probably went about a season and a half, maybe 2. I can guarantee that even though I stopped watching it, I would go and sell my house and walk down to the bookies right now with that cash and put money on it. It never got fucking better because I don't know. I don't know what this was. Considering the iconic characters they had to play with, and I think, like, let's be generous. I think they kind of went, well, let's look at other characters in this universe away from Batman because it's kind of pre-Batman, and let's put the shine the light on them. And I do think the dude who played the Penguin was at least compelling on screen, like, but they just made all of them look shit, and they made them infinitely less interesting than any other rendition I think I'd ever seen of them,
and completely fucked the timeline.
Yeah.
Because you had Catwoman as older than Bruce, and you had, you know, Riddler already being an adult with, you know, 8-9-year-old Bruce being there. It was just, everything was just wrong with it. It's like, if you're gonna do young Gordon, that's fine. Have him go against crime bosses. Have it as like a CSI program or something like that. Don't start fucking with timelines. It's the point where it makes no sense and pisses off your audience.
Well, you know, we sort of said about like allegories of what sort of shows they are like outside of the comic book universe, and you know, we talked about like teen shows and things like this. I didn't really get what this was either. It almost felt like it was supposed to be a darker, edgier teen program, but I don't know. It just didn't come across like that. And Gordon, who I can't remember his actor's name. I just remember him as the dude from the OC. God, he played a boring fucking Gordon, didn't he? I mean, like, sucked the life out of every scene he was in. Of the one that I watched a lot of, I think. Yeah, and I'm pretty confident that this is the worst comic book-esque TV show that I've put any particular time into watching. This one is utter garbage, avoid at all costs.
Yes, this was fucking dross.
Yeah.
So, as we've said so far, pretty much most of these, other than Hulk, have been predominantly DC.
Yeah. DC are ruling TV up until Gotham. I'm blaming Gotham for the downfall of everything here.
This is where Marvel, because we are at the point where the MCU has begun and is becoming the juggernaut that it will become. And the first thing we get is Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., which does something that nothing else does before this. It fits in as a tie-in to all the
Yeah.
movies and sits in timeline as what happens when the movies aren't happening.
Yeah.
And I really fucking enjoyed this. I didn't do all of it because I did tap out after a while because it got to the point where they were splitting seasons up to go around the films because it was when the films were coming out more regularly than they
Yeah.
were at the beginning. But it had nods to the films. It explained things that happened to the films, yet never giving us the main heroes of the films. But you would get cameos of side characters and things like that
Well,
in this.
and we had Agent Coulson, who is
And
from the
Coulson
films,
is,
isn't it?
yeah,
Like, yeah, I mean, we didn't really. There wasn't really much. Like, even if you look outside of the superhero comic book stuff, there wasn't really anything that I can think of out there that we had spin-off TV shows of things, but not ones that actually took a direct character from a major motion picture and let them have a TV show of their own, and then, as you say, get cameos for people that you've seen in the movies. I mean, movies and TV were quite divorced from each other, weren't they? It was
yeah.
almost you're either in the movie biz or you're in the TV biz, and never the twain shall meet. But yeah, I mean, it was really kind of quite unique from that regard. I wasn't a big fan. I tried it. I I didn't dislike it, but it just felt a bit poor man's MCU to me. And
Mm.
I don't know. I didn't feel like they did enough with. I mean, they had all of these fresh characters that you could do anything with, really. And I don't know. I felt like it was weaker than it could have been. But as I say, my hat's off to it for um, daring for I guess the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but let's say Marvel Entertainment Group, so the stuff outside of the comic
Yeah.
books, going, hang on a minute, we can link TV shit into this as well. And I think it was actually a really good idea. There's a dark side to it, which we'll get to, but it was a really good idea, I think.
They followed that with the gold standard of movie tie-ins, the amazing Agent Carter,
Yep.
which again took from the first first Captain America film, and we see what happens with Peggy.
If you haven't watched it, pause this, go and carve out 18 hours of your day to watch the 18 episodes and come back. You won't regret it. It's bloody excellent.
And as you said, it was one of those. These have everyone from the films.
Yeah.
You've got the young Stark's dad. I can't remember what his first name is.
Howard.
Yes. Jarvis is there, who does the voice of Jarvis for the computer for the films going forward. You've got obviously Peggy there, and
She's great as well, isn't she? Haley Atwell.
she's
Like,
so
really,
fucking
really.
good.
I mean, this show is massively underappreciated as well, isn't it? It only goes 2 seasons and it did get cancelled because it wasn't getting the viewing figures. Now, I can't help but kind of lean into the it's set in a time, isn't it? So it's set post Captain America: The First Avenger, and it stays in that sort of time scale. So I guess that might be a barrier for some. And your main character is Peggy Carter, and like as much as we like to think that the world is better, there is still a bit of I'm not going to watch a show about a woman. A woman, and I think that almost put a barrier up. But this is great superhero stuff, and again, you can argue actually it's a bit more kind of secret agent-y affair because they're not powered or anything like that. But this is great superhero stuff that you would see in the comic books. I think this is a wonderful show. But yeah, as I say, cancelled before its time, cancelled unfortunately, and I almost wish it had happened maybe 4 or 5 years later, because I don't think it had been cancelled if it came out 4 or 5 years later. But
Yeah, it, it's one of those. The things I love about it are some of the little bits where you see Stark's dad's inventions, which you then see other versions of later in other films and in turn up with like Iron Man and things like that, and it's just like that's where that all started, and it's just great storytelling. It's a great TV show. It's there's a bit of a sort of spy of the week. It is a bit of a throwback in some of the ways it's done. With some of it is like the old British Avengers. Um, you're on mute.
I am on mute. Why do I even put myself on mute? With tinges of Wonder Woman as well.
Yeah,
I'm with you. I think it kind of it has that a real nod, and bearing in mind, yes, we said it's set in an era, but they didn't have to kind of use a storytelling techniques. But I think you're right. Kind of 60s, 70s TV pastiches appear in this, and and it looks great. Like it's got a different style to some of the other stuff we've been used to because of the time frame that it's set in.
and it's all on Disney Plus. Get on it.
Get on it.
You will not.
There's
You will
fuck
not
all
be
else to
disappointed.
watch that's good on Disney Plus. You might as well watch that. You can watch some Disney produced shit, or you can watch this that was produced before Disney come along and start to fuck stuff up badly. And that is your Disney advert. Thanks for sponsoring us, Disney. It's good.
Next, we have the Netflix Marvel run.
Speaking of great stuff, comic book TV gets really bloody good at this point.
So you've got Daredevil, Jessica Jones, Luke Cage, Punisher, Iron Fist,
and the
Defenders, which I hang my head in shame. I have not watched hardly any of this. I've watched a few episodes of Daredevil. I've watched a few episodes of Punisher. I really do need to find the multitude of hours to actually get into this. If only I didn't have to work.
We could always do something about that. People watching this, give us loads of money so that Chris can watch Netflix Marvel. I guess as a description point for this, and this certainly rings true for Jessica Jones and Daredevil. I'll come to like Luke Cage in a minute, but this is a very different take on it. So things are dark and grittier. They look dark and grittier, like the way these are filmed. These aren't shiny superhero stuff like we've tended to see in a lot of the stuff that we do. And because a lot of these are the street level heroes, so it has that gritty street look to it, these borrow heavily from the comic books. So the Daredevil TV show borrows heavily from Daredevil stories along the way. I'd say much more akin to the way that the movies do, like kind of taking out bits that they like from lots of different stories and putting them in a pot and making a longer story or combine bits into a story. Jessica Jones, again, very much like that, borrows from a lot shorter amount of comics, but does the same sort of thing. But these would, I know it's Netflix, but these would not fill out a place for me stylistically wise. This is more like modern TV making. So we're not looking at like shows for teens or that as an audience. This is reaching out and trying to bring these characters to the audience that watched The Walking Dead, that watches Breaking Bad, that watches The Wire. That's where they're kind of going with this, but not moving totally away from the fact that these are superheroes. So Daredevil isn't a costume; he fights people. Jessica Jones is a hard-drinking private eye who is often critical of superheroes. They even mention early doors in here that like the attack from Avengers. So it's linked a bit, but without going too much into it. The reason why I pick out Jessica Jones and Punisher falls under this criteria as well, because I think it's like that. The reason why I kind of differentiate them between Luke Cage, where Luke Cage is dramatically different, is Luke Cage borrows from that feels. Oh God, I'm going to be very careful where I go with this because it feels a bit Tarantino-esque, but don't expect a Tarantino movie. But you know, when he will lean into a genre of movie that he really loves and make his product based off of that. The
Yeah.
people who made this, I think, like Luke Cage, like the 70s, and like blaxploitation movies, and they put this in a pot with hip hop music, and out comes certainly the first season of Luke Cage is fantastic. And again, you won't see anything else in comic book TV, certainly superhero comic book TV, that is like this.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, they also made Iron Fist and they also made the Defenders. And it is such a shame because Iron Fist is the character, certainly having seen what they did with the other shows, the one I was most excited about because I thought, here we go, finally, Kung Fu, the fucking TV show, brought into modern times with a superhero. Unfortunately, it was shit. It really was bad. It was painfully bad. And the Defenders, where they tried to knit them all together with a common goal, it was average. And unfortunately, I think it's slightly tarnished how well I felt about the whole Netflix product. But that Netflix era is great. I think it's so worth experiencing because this is the closest thing that comic book TV gets to comic books, and they do it really well.
And also not under the Disney overlord.
No. And a shame for me because when the Disney overlords become the overlords, Netflix's TV shows died out pretty quick afterwards. Now, you know, there's lots of stories out there, but I think ultimately Disney didn't want Netflix, a rival streaming service, to necessarily be using some of the characters that they now owned, or probably priced them to a point where it wasn't worth it. Which is, as I say, which is a shame because it almost built this lovely little pocket universe of its own that I was really enjoying, but maybe it was right that it went when it did, because maybe if I'd had another, we'll get to the burnout era soon, won't we? Maybe if I'd had another 5 or 6 years of this stuff being piled on top of each other more and more and more. Something you said about the Arrowverse. So, you know, they did these shows, and you knew that they were building to the Defenders at a certain point, and then you knew you were getting like a Punisher spin-off, but it had started to get a little bit like, oh fuck, I don't really want the next one of these, or can we not have a bit of a break between this? So see, and maybe the death knell was at the right time, stop them from oversaturating it too much and spoiling my good memories of it.
Yeah. The one thing that I will go on before we go into the burnout section is Netflix, and as well with Amazon Prime, giving indies a go. So you get the boys, you get Umbrella Academy, you get some other stuff done as animation, but we're not really going over cartoons. But as you said, I think because of the success of Walking Dead, these are some of the stuff that
that they probably commissioned a while before, but was paying off.
We finally get it. Umbrella Academy, didn't like it,
loved it.
And still not seen The Boys yet.
The Boys, I think you'll really like. I do. I think The Boys is very good. Very, I was going to say very HBO-like, but no, I don't think HBO would actually produce it. But I would say adult humour. And them being two separate things rather than adult humour. It's not just blue gag after blue gag, but you know, it skews to a kind of more grown up, more because it doesn't shy away from violence and real world problems, and it interjects a lot of kind of humour even in that violence and things like that. So, and it's Garth Ennis written, so that's the kind of way that his writing does. But I think you'll really like The Boys. One of the other ones in this kind of era, and it's run into this point, is Lock and Key, which is very good. An excellent comic made into an excellent TV show, and yeah, I think Walking Dead birthed this stuff. I think it made a lot of TV execs go up the shop and buy those collected editions. What of these can we turn into TV shows? But also, I think you're right. I think Netflix not being able to do the Marvel stuff, or it not being right for them to do the Marvel stuff, made them go, we know we've got an audience for comic book stuff now, though. let's go and make some. And I think it's
Yeah.
really good. As a comic book fan, I feel like I am probably more spoilt in the TV arena than I am in the movie arena at this point. Like there is a lot of stories that I love. That so I forgot even to kind of write a note about this one, but I want to say it was last year. But bearing in mind we're still in COVID land, so any time in the last 100 years, Netflix did Sweet Tooth, which is an amazing comic book. I love the comic book. And if you'd ever told me that Sweet Tooth would be a TV show, I'd have got, yeah. Even post things like Walking Dead, I said, yeah, of course it will. And they're adapting things like that now, and they're I don't know, it's that indie TV comic book production stuff, love it. And I haven't really seen any yet that are awful. Like I've not seen a really bad adaptation yet. They've all
Yeah.
been at least good, I think. So, and long may that continue.
Yeah, my issue with Umbrella Academy was I just thought that the actual story itself was dull.
Oh man, I
It
love
didn't.
the
It
story.
didn't get me. But I think that's just a me thing because
Dude,
most people I talk
spoilers.
about love it.
Spoilers. They go into JFK killing in the second season. It's fucking amazing. And again, based off the comic book, so like that's kind of where they go in it. But you know, like you get into time travel and things like that. And but yeah, I mean, I know a few people who didn't like Umbrella Academy. That kind of has a bit of a modern teen thing to it for me. You know, that is
Mm.
kind of probably your equivalent of your teen shows or your young adult show now, where everyone's got a bit of edge to them. They're a little bit snarky, a little bit shitty, and things like that. But no, I really enjoyed it. There's one out there, and unfortunately, it only runs one season, and it's not kind of readily available. I think I can't remember what service had it. I think one of the streamers had it, but Deadly Class. If you can find it, give it a watch. The first season is really good, but just give it a watch because if you even half like the first season, then buy the comic book because the comic's fucking brilliant and it's even better than the TV show. But I loved it, but unfortunately, didn't find the audience. And you know, we sort of, and again, we'll get into our overkill theories in a minute, but that's probably my only concern for a lot of these indie comic book adaptations is there are a lot of them, and I think some inevitably, even though they're good, will get lost in the shuffle because people only have so many hours in the day, don't they? And I think Deadly Class, unfortunately, despite its quality, got lost in the shuffle.
Yeah, the thing is, as we've said on the normal Renaissance Man, if it's not in the top
Yeah,
10 or recommended to you because of stuff that you also watch,
yeah,
there's so much shit on Netflix, there's so
yeah.
much shit on Amazon that you're gonna stuff's not gonna be seen.
Well, and bearing in mind, some of this stuff gets released just straight to American TV, and I know. I mean, I have TV. I can't remember the last time I watched something on TV though. I watch stuff through streaming services. So I think finding in the UK that audience for this stuff, it is going to be streaming services that generally do it. So if it has not hit hard on the American TV channel that it is, again, streaming service are less likely to pick it up, so on and so forth. But
Yeah.
yeah.
So we will go into Overkill,
Disney time.
which started so well
Oh God, it did, didn't it? Oh, it did.
with arguably, and I will fight people on this one, the best TV show adaptation since Batman 66 in one division.
You know when I said about how much I love Daredevil and Jessica Jones?
Yeah.
I honestly, if you'd have told me that there was going to be a Marvel, because again, Marvel boy, a Marvel TV show that I thought would top them by a long way, I'd have gone, no fucking way. And then if you'd have told me it would be the first one that Disney produced, I'd have gone, yeah, right, of course it will. Yeah, this TV show is a modern TV masterpiece. Even if you forget the comic book elements of it, which I'm always prone to, but This is in my top 10 TV shows of all time. It is the honest truth, because it is just amazing. It is absolutely tremendous.
Yeah, and the thing with this one is, yes, it fits in with the movies, which everything now has to with the Disney MCU overlordness of it, but it was standalone. It was its own thing. It had its own style. It didn't feel like what we're going to go over with the others when we go past this point, that it wasn't being an elongated version of one of the films.
It's something that like we'll probably touch on multiple times over the many years we'll do this podcast. Is in any genre, in any creative endeavor, but certainly something you see in comic books, is this is when you allow someone who has a great story to tell and has a really inventive way to tell it, and you give them the toys that we like to do it with, and
Yeah.
it just come together in this kind of beautiful, I was gonna say beautiful broth. I don't think I've ever had a broth, so I don't know why I'd use that. But you know, like they created this wonderful thing of going, and here it is, enjoy. And oh god, yeah, like it ticked every box that a TV show can tick for me, and more so because they did it with characters that I love.
Yeah, the callbacks to 50s, 60s,
Yeah,
70s, 80s, 90s TV shows, which the audience age range, which is, the normal ones that are going to be watching this sort of stuff, it hits with that perfect level of nostalgia because you would have seen this shit growing up.
and with a purpose rather than just doing it as
Yeah.
a this is our hook.
Yeah, everything, none of it felt out of place.
Yeah.
It all made sense when it came to the end of it, and it all explained why it happened and why it was happening the way it was happening.
In retrospect, one of the things that kind of interests me, and of course, like time moves on. And now, bearing in mind, I'm somewhat talking about like this come out many years ago. The Disney Marvel TV stuff hasn't been running that long, but I think because of COVID land, it feels like this is almost a decade ago. But I remember the first couple of, because they dropped the first 2 episodes as a double bill, as I guess we would call it. And don't get me wrong, there was a lot of like reviews and there was a lot of stuff out there. There was a lot of love from it from those first two. Those first two, I was gobsmacked. I was, oh my god, this is fucking amazing. I'm in for the ride, but with a tinge of fear that they would mess it up. But I do remember at the time a lot of people going, oh, that's boring, wasn't it? Why am I watching something in black and white? Where's my superheroes? Where's my powers and stuff like that? And as much as I criticize Disney, and I do at every opportunity, I think if this hadn't been on Disney Plus and hadn't been pushed the way that it was, I think a lot of people, if this was just on telly, I think a lot of people would have given up on this after those first 2 episodes and missed something great. And a lot of those people who I heard being very critical of those first 2 episodes, they grew into the series, let's say. That the stuff that they maybe weren't liking in episode 1 and 2, as we got to maybe episode 4 and 5, they kind of then had that moment of going, okay, I see why 1 and 2 did what it did now. So a rare occasion when I will give Disney some credit to say, one, they allowed this to be made, and two, I think if it hadn't been on that platform, people would have quit it a lot sooner than they did.
Yeah. One of the greatest TV reveals of all time.
Oh God, yeah, yeah.
It's Agatha all along.
And it was strange because this was COVID time, so we were working from home, most of us, and it was being released on a Friday morning. And it actually become my Friday. I don't often take a lunch break at work, or if I do, my lunch break is the 7 minutes it takes me to smoke a cigarette. But on Fridays, I took a lunch break to watch WandaVision, and that moment, it's strange because we're all at home, but that felt like something akin to, let's go back to Dallas. Like when Bobby appeared in the shower, and people would talk about those TV moments as water cooler moments where everyone was talking about it. Well, we all watch TV really weirdly and differently now, don't we? We're all watching it at different times, different paces, and things like that. But even though people were at home, I would go on to calls and people would be humming or going, "Did you see the Agatha bit?" Like it become a kind of zeitgeist moment. And again, I think because it was the first big Marvel release on Disney Plus, wasn't it? I think Mandalorian had actually been released before this, so I don't think it was their first major TV show. But
yeah, because America got Disney Plus first. When it came over here, was when Mando season 2 just started, and then we got WandaVision.
Okay, yeah,
and then and it was just glorious.
It was, and you think to yourself, "Top that, fuckers." And I had a little tinge that they would that we would see a glorious age of TV, and then the rest happened.
Yeah, and then Hawkeye, Winter Soldier, and Falcon, and Loki. We did an episode about Hawkeye, and we even said at that point that it was basically an elongated film, which could have been 3 TV series, but they mashed it into one and fucked it all because they didn't let anything breathe in the 6 hours that they gave it.
And you know what we've just said about WandaVision, where you give a creative person like the ability to play with these toys and do something great with it. This is the example of where you give someone a toy we like. They actually touched on some of the bits that were in some of the comics that were good, but their big creative thing is, I've fucking watched a Christmas movie before. Let's smash as much Christmas shit into this as we can. And it was just disappointing from that regard of going, that's the best you've got. Like, and don't get me wrong, I'll watch a lot of Christmas movies, but I want to watch a lot of shitty Christmas movies because they're shitty Christmas movies. I don't want my favourite toys to be turned into a shitty Christmas movie.
My big thing with Hawkeye was you had Echo, you then had Natasha's sister, and you had Kingpin, and it was like, this is 3 seasons worth of villains.
And because you've given none of
3
them,
episodes,
you gave none of them time to breathe, so none of them meant anything. No one cared. But I mean, I think when we get to this stage, one of the things to consider is the audience that they're catering to, and I think we should be a large part of the audience. But maybe we're just not, because they don't need to make it for us anymore. They're making it to make as much money as they can. And let's be honest, I think a large part of the audience that probably watch this and like that, because they don't necessarily, and probably because a lot of the way that media is presented now, they don't want a season where you learn Echo, where she becomes a threat, or you learn these layers of them. They go, right, sin that one, what's my next one? Sin that one, what's my next one? And you know, we've said it before on the movie side of it, but I think the TV also has a bit of this, is that a lot of people's review of whether something was good or bad will be based off of what the end credit scene was. And that's it. And I think we are almost in this. I mean, I often describe it on the Renaissance Men podcast when we talk about stuff like this, of going, it's crack addict TV. You just want that next hit, but that next hit has to be quick and kind of snappy and satisfying, rather than stories that build over. And when I say build over time, I mean, we go back to WandaVision. WandaVision weren't 8 seasons. This weren't 500 episodes that got them there, but they had a story. They had they had it mapped out quite clearly what they wanted it to be, and they told it. Whereas, yes, unfortunately, Hawkeye, as I say, is a crappy, is kernels of a good story with a crappy Christmas theme tacked onto it, so that they could make a jolly little trailer out of it. But not actually giving them time to explore any of the stuff that's in it, because we must give them another surprise. We must give them another surprise. We must give them another surprise.
Yeah, Hawkeye or Falcon and Winter Soldier was another one that I mean, that should have been a hour and a half film, but they tried to spread it out because it didn't do anything for a lot of it. Um, and I really didn't get on with it. I think I'm all for having lesser known characters being the villains and stuff, and a way of introducing other people in, but at least have some interest to them. Um, the Red Hand did not.
See, I think this is the one where probably you and me differ the most because I think you're a lot more down on this than I am. I actually, you sort of said about this being like kind of an hour and a half movie. I'm the other way on this. I'm very much what we just said about Hawkeye. For me, this is 3 or 4 seasons worth of content crammed into one. I think like you build that peril and the introduction of the new Cap, who kind of goes a little bit off the wall. That's a season or two in itself if you let that breathe. And I think they had a lot there, but they tried to cram too much into a small period of time so that everything lacked any resonance, meaning. And also, the core premise of the show is at the end of Avengers Endgame,
Yeah,
Cap gives him the shield and says, "Go and be Cap." At the beginning of this, we get the long drawn out, "I'm going to do my insurance" scene. But he relinquishes the shield, and at the end of it, he gets the shield back. There's nothing that happens in between that really tells me why they bothered with the story. I didn't see that journey where, like, I can see why. Yes, he realised he should take up the shield and he should champion it because he just didn't do a good enough job. But as I say, I think it was too unfocused. But I think as a string of stories, all of those could have been much stronger if they were maybe a season each. I mean, like the US agent story is really good in the comic books because it happens over a period of time. You see him kind of take over the mantle, and the pressures that he brings on himself. He starts taking drugs because he wants to be the best Cap, and then those drugs kind of push him to losing his temper where he hurts someone. And of course, once you cross that line, I think it's a really good story. It was just told too quick. But yeah, they were. This felt more movie-like, but this was rushing. This was rushing getting the story out there. They decided they wanted to, for some reason, rather than just letting Sam become Cap and tell a compelling story about him in a movie, they went, let's chuck a TV show where he decides he doesn't want to be, and then at the end of it he is, so that then we can announce the movie after that. It was like a long advert and not a very good one.
yeah, and then Loki.
Heartbreaking for me, this one.
I had so much hope.
Yeah.
We had Loki, who's a great character. Owen Wilson. And the only good bit was the multiple Lokis where we had Richard E. Grant as classic
Yes. Yeah, I mean, like, as much as I say this one's heartbreaking, and I am quite harsh on this one because I wanted to love it. But yeah, like at the very least, it deserves to exist because Richard E. Grant Loki is fucking amazing. And for me, the heartbreaking part of this is full of promise, as you say, an amazing cast, and even the premise of it. Loki has been pulled out of time, and he's with, like, let's say, the time police, and they kind of go, well, this is between like you and you dying. And I was supposed to tell him that, but it kind of twigs that, and you can pretty much go in anywhere, do anything, interact with anything, and you go, wow, what a great idea for a TV show. Not necessarily original, but what a great idea to do in the Marvel TV show, because you can drop into all those situations that we've already seen in movies, but tell it in a slightly different way. You can drop him into all manner of comic book things if you want your fan service, things that we probably will never see in a movie. You can introduce characters that you may well want to reintroduce in the movies and just forget about them in this because it's set in a different time, or they never come to pass in that. And instead, what we got was a series of episodes set in the same grey corridors over and over and over again. And the couple of locations they went to looked like they wouldn't have been out of place in Mandalorian and Boba Fett because they were full of sand, or like kind of one obscure planet that we didn't really have any knowledge of or any affinity to. And yeah, it just I said about toys earlier. You in this one they actually opened the toy chest and went, look, all of your favorite toys are inside here, and then put me in a grey corridor and asked me to watch that for 6 weeks. Gutted for it, absolutely gutted.
So,
Is this
as
burnout though, Chris? Like,
I,
are these Marvel ones? Are the last sort of 3 Marvel ones subpar, or is it a combination of we've seen a lot of movies over the last 6 years for Marvel, and maybe WandaVision spoiled us, and are we burnt out?
I think we are overkill. I think it was better when at the most we got 2 films a year. We
Yeah,
get the summer film and the winter film, not one every 4 months,
yeah.
and then a TV series between each one. Because it's the thing. Wanda was what, summer,
COVID summer,
so summer
COVID.
20.
Yeah,
So we've had 4 TV series in a year.
and that pace ain't abating either, is it? Like the
No.
release schedule coming up is full of them,
So
absolutely chock full of them.
this year we have Moon Knight,
Like
Miss Marvel.
trailer looks amazing, by the way, for Moon Knight. Like that one, I am. Oh god, I feel like I'm destined to be Loki'd here, because that one
Yeah,
feels like it could be really good.
yeah.
Please let it be good.
So this year we've got Moon Knight, Miss Marvel, She Hulk, and What If season 2. But we
Ugh.
haven't mentioned What If first because it's a cartoon.
Well, and if Chris has got any sense, we never will. Because don't let me speak about What If again.
And then also, but without dates, but have been confirmed, Agatha, the House of Harkness, Armor Wars, Echo, I Am Groot, Ironheart, Loki 2, Marvel Zombies, Secret Invasion, Silk, Spider-Man Freshman Year, and Wakanda.
And do you know what? Like franchise wise, there's a lot that I'm interested in there. We've spoken on other podcasts about my love of Miss Marvel as a character, and what a great character I think it is to have in the world. She-Hulk, I've got fond memories of some of the She-Hulk stuff. I'm really interested to see what they do with Secret Invasion. But at the moment, I'm really struggling to look forward to any of them, because their success rate so far is 1 in 4 on TV and in the Disney reign, and that's not a good success rate for me. And
I think
because
it
I
doesn't.
like some of these franchises, I don't want them to have a 1 in 4 success rate,
Yeah.
and I worry about that.
The other thing that I think doesn't help is, and this isn't comic book related, but look at what they're doing with Star Wars.
Mm.
That how much of this Star Wars stuff that's come out has really sort of gone, oh my fuck, that's amazing.
No,
Mando is
sucks.
good. It's all
No, it's
right,
not. It's fucking terrible. It's fucking terrible.
but you've got like the Book of Boba Fett that's basically Mando season 3 for the last 3 episodes.
I couldn't tell you what it is, because I don't think they know what it is.
But it doesn't fill you with greatness
No.
when you see what they have been doing. And is it a case of shit, we have a channel, we need to have constant content,
Yeah.
so fuck the quality, just get it done? Whereas what was great about the Marvel films was they were interesting stories that they wanted to tell, that had the overloop of the whole Thanos thing going on during it, but everything had time to breathe, settle, and
Yeah.
be absorbed. Because up until um, what Civil War, everything was once every 6 months.
Yeah,
Once we got to Civil War, that was where the pace picked up, and it was every couple of months there was the new,
yeah.
and
Well, and
I
again,
think
you
that
like
doesn't help.
the excitement dissipates a bit, doesn't it? Like you kind of
Yeah,
go when you have again. I'll go back to my crack addict entertainment. When I know it's 6 months, but sometimes even longer than 6 months before I see the next thing, that anticipation builds. Whereas when you know you're getting a new one every, I mean, it was horrible. Like because again, I say crack addict entertainment as a criticism because it is, but I am also guilty of loving a bit of crack every now and again. Yes, it's very Moorish because like. When One Division finished, I was like, "Oh no! Like, what am I going to do on a Friday now? Like, I want another one right now. Give me more, please." And of course, they couldn't instantaneously, but I guess effectively that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to regularly give you more because they want you to watch their service and carry on subscribing. I get it as a business model, but yeah, it's just it feels like too much. It feels like it's been rammed down our throat. And one of the interesting things you said there, I mean, I know you said like Loki too, but the Echo TV show. So darting back into kind of a bit of a Hawkeye is Echo felt like she only existed in that TV show because there's going to be a TV show about her. And
yeah,
again, I think now that it's almost a machine, isn't it? It's almost a factory machine that is churning out this stuff. That the consequences of these TV shows feel, or potentially feel, a lot less. Because I go, is the next one I watch going to feature 5 different characters randomly in an almost Book of Boba Fett episode 5 and 6 way? Because they're setting me up for whatever the next show is, and I don't. But not even in a clever way. It's not like, wow, I want to watch the next show now. It's just like, well, you've done almost an extended advert within this TV season for what the next one will be, and I don't want that. Like, I want my TV shows to have that story, which is good, and if that leads to me wanting to watch stories about other characters with it, I mean, it's almost, I guess, like if you equate it directly to comic books, is that for many years there was like the X-Men, there was the Avengers, there was the Fantastic Four, there was Cap, there was there was X amount of titles, and quite often new titles would only come into existence if a character had got popular over a period of time in one of the other comics.
yeah,
Which I can see that from a TV world, that would be a really smart way of doing it, wouldn't it? Like if we had watched, well, let's use Agatha. Agatha, I think, was never planned to have a spin-off show, but was such a phenomenon, they've created a spin-off show.
yeah.
Good, thumbs up, like the idea of that. But I think in a large part, these characters are already predetermined that they're getting a TV show, and it's almost here they are, look at them and like them because there's a show coming, and I don't like it that way. I like things to become to happen naturally, I guess.
Yeah, it's as I said, I understand why they're feeding the beast the way they are, but as the consumer that isn't their target audience, I think we are the outliers here of just going, yeah, it's too much. Just rein it back a bit. Be a bit take more time. Give us better stories. Give us a bit more thought behind it, and
The
you
problem
know,
is that and don't get me wrong, it's mass audience to kind of, let's say, niche audience on it, but we're the ones who are more likely to spend more money on it, I think, as well. Like if they were
yeah,
giving us something great, I think we'd be more likely to go, okay, if we had to pay for a premium streaming service that had this, and like because the lives we've got and things like that, I'd pay 4 times the amount a month to see stuff that I thought was good every month than pay cheap to get average at best.
yeah,
It's that McDonald's to go into a really good restaurant argument again, isn't it? Of going, I can afford 20 McDonald's for the price of a burger in a really posh restaurant. But do you know what? There's quantity over quality, and those 20 McDonald's burgers are still going to be at best average burgers. Where that one I've spent 20 times the money for will be fucking great.
yeah. Well, I will equate that to real life. I took my better half to uh, Argentine steakhouse,
Yeah,
with a couple of cocktails was 100 odd, just over 100 quid for a meal. But fuck me, that was some of the best steak we've ever eaten, and was amazing.
Yeah.
And I would much rather do that twice a year, than go to Weatherspoons or another generic pub and spend a tenner on a steak and a pint.
And I know it can come a bit like arseholey and preachy, but like I do fear in all of the entertainment streams of, if we don't want more and demand more, they're not going to make more. And if we accept, and I will say substandard, but let's be honest, like even if you do like them, there's not a lot of effort being put into some of this stuff. Why are they ever going to put in effort though if we carry on watching it and funding it? And I think that's kind of where I plant my flag in it, of going, like, I want it to be brilliant. Now, don't get me wrong, I know that everything can't be brilliant, and I know that sometimes like really good writers, really good creators in any format, that they won't always knock it out of the park. It's really hard to do. But I would give so much credit to someone who tried to knock it out of the park than someone that said, "Oh, fuck it, let's just phone it in because these pricks are going to watch it anyway." And I feel like that feels like where we are with maybe Marvel TV at the moment. Now, this is the Marvel era, isn't it? DC have got a few things out there. They've got a Lois and Clark show again, haven't they? That's on Saturday. Lois and Superman, I think it's called now. On Saturday evenings, and it is again probably back to a love story, but more of like when Superman has had kids and family, and there's a few DC franchises out there, but this is the Marvel era of TV, and I worry about the Marvel era of TV. However, when I say I worry about it, going back to something we were talking about probably 10-15 minutes ago, but do you know what, as much as I worry about it, oh my god, I've got my indie comic TV empire that's out there, and that's a wonderful thing to behold. But if you burn out this audience, you kill it, don't you? And that's my worry, is that the damage that can be done to the hobby that I love by oversaturation.
See, it's that thing of, is the fact that Marvel is as huge as it is good for everyone? Probably not.
Yeah.
But the fact that people know that people will eat this shit up is good, because it means that a Netflix, an Amazon will take a risk on an indie. The problem is getting people to know it's there. That's the problem, because it's not the big Marvel thing, and it's not front page and getting all the promotion and push behind it. So we are getting our indies, we are getting our interesting stories and interesting creators doing stuff, but because it doesn't get the same push behind it for people to see it,
will it get lost in the shuffle?
It gets lost in the shuffle, and then that's when they go, well, you're not getting the figures, the viewing ratings. Then that's where it dies, because people have had too much of the big shiny McDonald's. They're not seeing the independent cafe that bangs out amazing food. Because, look, we've got a neon sign.
Here's that thing that is so full of salt that you can't actually taste what it is, but because of that, you recognise the taste of salt, so you keep coming back for more, rather than going, I wonder if there's any other flavours in the world.
So that will have us done.
Before we go, that will have us done, I have a question for you. So bearing in mind, I know we looked at kind of them as semi-errors, let's say. Favourite error of TV from the ones we've covered?
It's got to be Golden Era, because other than WandaVision, I've never rewatched anything since rewatching Batman's and Wonder Woman's, and
Yeah.
I own all of Batman 66 on DVD, and I will regularly sit there and chuck random episodes on. I never have that urge for anything since then, other than when as I said, I did a whole rewatch of WandaVision because I had to, because it's
Yeah.
an amazing series and a story as a whole. But yeah, I don't think any of the other eras have got stuff that would make me.
Well, this era, like as we said, probably has more than we've ever had before. And if you actually carved out the stuff you didn't like, or you were lucky enough not to see anything you didn't like, and you just focused on the stuff that really resonates with you is good, there's a really good argument for going, this is the new golden age because there's great stuff. However, I think there's something about that purity of the golden age is that there was, I mean, 3 was a lot, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And that's discounting Spider-Man only, as I say, because we didn't really sort of see much of it. But that was a lot, and that was enough, and that was impactful enough, I think, to really, really impress me and to make me go, wow, I want to learn more about this. And yeah, I think I'd go with you. I think that golden age. There are 3 distinctly different shows with some shared DNA on some of the storytelling elements, but 3 belters. There's not a shit one amongst them, is there? So well done them. Whereas now I think there's unfortunately too much crap next to some really good stuff that sometimes it's hard to really give it the credit. And as I say, there was just a lot of dry decades in between, wasn't there? You know, as much as I love Lois and Clark and Smallville, I couldn't pick them out as an era that I love because they're just a singular TV show running over a longer period of time.
Yeah. So we will be back, and our next show, we're picking fucking sides. We're having a civil war.
We are.
We will be looking at the comic. We will be looking at the film, the differences between such, and as we said, picking our fucking sides and putting our flags in the mast. Are we Team Cap or Team Iron Man? And you will find out on our next
Team
issue.
America. Fuck yeah.
Yeah. So until next time, please like, subscribe, ring the bell, comments. Tell us what you watched as kids or what you think of the new stuff. Anything that we've missed.
Follow us on our new Twitter, where
Yes.
we will be doing like announcements of when the shows will drop. And I think now that we've kind of got that as a vehicle, we will try and do something with it. You know, like have kind of like a bit more kind of fun interactions, hopefully. So yeah, jump on our Twitter.
Yes. What we might do is the show after Civil War will be a top 5. I might do a Twitter poll, chuck it up,
Boom,
and you can pick what will be the top 5 that we do.
Yep.
So yeah, there will be stuff on there. Again, that is said Lacey comic. So SEDLACEY comic, COMIC. Get the dyslexic one at spell.
I must admit, I totally kind of didn't. One, I didn't think of it, but 2, I'm just sat here going, "Oh, it's doing such a good job spelling it out," because I'm going to put it on the fucking screen at the same time. So could have helped.
And until next time, goodbye.
Bye. Thanks for watching, and just remember, you can join the Cult of Egg by liking and subscribing to this YouTube channel. We release regular content where we talk about all things geek, all things pop culture, and all things that we're interested in. You can also come along and join the discussion on Facebook groups and Renaissance Cast. And you can join us on our Twitch channel where Stu regularly streams games. And if you'd like to support us, then please follow the link for the Patreon. Thanks very much.